Today on the AI Business and Innovation podcast, I'm joined by one of the world's leading futurists and technology forecasters, Daniel Burrus. From advising Fortune 500 companies to pioneering the concept of hard trends and authoring game-changing books like Flash Foresight and The Anticipatory Organization, Daniel has reshaped how we think about the future of innovation and disruption. Today, we dive into the predictive power of tech, what's ahead for AI in society, and what it means to be anticipatory in an age of exponential change. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. So what a pleasure to be with you today.
Excellent. So, Daniel, let's just dive right into the first segment. And I know that we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to segue into all different types of places. So, just diving into a topic that I've benefited a lot from studying of yours is the hard versus soft trends. You've often drawn on a sharp distinction between hard trends and soft trends. I understand that hard trends are future facts and that soft trends are some kinds of assumptions. In other words, they're maybe more they'd be more subjective, and the hard trends would be more objective per se. So my question is, how can leaders apply hard trends to make better decisions in these crazy times we live in right now?
Yeah, well, that is a great question. I'd love to get into that. And by the way, I've developed this methodology over quite a few decades, and it's been a proven success. I mean, I work with not only defense contractors, but Google and Amazon and others, and large companies at the executive level, helping them to transform how they plan and innovate based on this methodology. So it's not just a new idea, it's been around. So let me now teach it. And by the way, let me frame this by saying the two most important moments in a human's life is the day you're born and the day you find out why you were born. And I'm really lucky. Long ago, I found out why I was put on the planet. I was put on the planet to teach. So instead of giving you some trends and saying good luck, what I want to do in this podcast is teach you and empower you with a methodology that you can use way beyond this podcast. And that comes from, again, this hard trend, soft trend methodology. So let me frame it up this way. There is no shortage of trends. As a matter of fact, it's pretty easy to predict that around January every year, we'll get a whole bunch of new trends for the next year. The future is far more predictable than you'd think. And instead of me saying, I'm the only guy with good trends, I'm instead saying you can take any trend and put them into one of two categories that empower you. They're either a hard trend based on what I call a future fact. Now, the litmus test for that is can't be changed. All right. If it can be changed, it's not hard. I'll give you some examples in a minute. The other is a soft trend. And as you pointed out, they're based on an assumption that may or may not happen. That doesn't mean it won't, but a future fact is different than a future maybe when it comes to innovation and planning and so on. And both have value. I love soft trends. Why do I love them? If you don't like them, you can change them. Why do I love hard trends? It lets you see disruptions before they disrupt so that disruption becomes a choice. I just want you to have a choice. It lets you see problems before you have them. I mean, you mentioned two of my books. One of my earlier books, Techno Trends, I wrote that in 1993. You can open one of and that was a bestseller globally. Even in China back then, you could open up and find a section that says Blockbuster is busted. And underneath, yeah, it is. And if you read under it, you can see it clearly describing what became Netflix. Now, by the way, could I predict they would call the company Netflix? No, you got to leave out the parts you can be wrong about. But the tech was there to create it, and the elements were there. And I believe if it can be done, it will be done. If you don't do it, someone else will. So what does hard trends do for you? It gives you certainty in an amazingly uncertain world. Now, think about that for a minute. I would say right now, all of us, globally, everyone, is experiencing more uncertainty than they ever have in their entire life right now. And uncertainty does not empower you. Actually, it's a giant brake. It's not an accelerator. It does not help you innovate. It does not help you solve problems. When you are uncertain, and if you're talking to someone you're selling to and they're uncertain, what do they say? I'll get back to you. They don't write big checks. But when they have certainty, whoa, they have the confidence to make a bold move. When they have certainty, they'll write a big check. When they have certainty, they are free to move forward. So hard trends can give you certainty. Now, I said I'd give you some examples. Let me give you some simple examples. We can get some more complex ones later. But first of all, there are thousands of hard trends, not 10 or 20. Let me give you an example. In the world of wireless technology, we went from 3G wireless to 4G wireless to 5G wireless. Is that it? No, It's going to be followed by 6G and then 7G and then 8G. We're putting a lot into the cloud. Is the cloud getting full? No, cloud's not getting full. AI is growing at beyond exponential speeds. If we don't like it, can we stop it? No, it's going to continue to grow beyond exponential speeds. By the way, that's a hard trend. What's the soft trend? How are you using it? Are you using it to do amazingly wonderful, beautiful things or horrific, horrible things? Well, that's soft. I don't know I can't predict how you're going to use it. However, I can predict the tools and the technology and how quickly it's accelerating, and to ignore it could be a problem. Hang in there. I know you got some questions, but let me just give a few more examples. All right. Is that okay?
Holding on.
Okay. I know you want to jump in. Hang in there. Hold on, please. All right. So I gave you some tech hard trends, but there are 3 categories of hard trends. Let me get those out, and then we can get into some questions. Obviously, one is technology, and it's been extremely predictable. If you, those of you that might have been reading my books or thousands of blogs or following me on LinkedIn, you know that I've had a track record of being right about where technology is going. By the way, how do I do that? I leave out the parts I can be wrong about. I'm going to show you how to do that in here. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to do that in here. For example, technology is a category. Let's pick a different one. There are 3 categories. How about demographics? We have aging populations in many countries, and we have young populations in others. For example, the United States, aging population; China, aging population; Japan, aging population; all of Europe, aging population. But yet you could go to other countries and they have a young population. As a matter of fact, in the hemisphere I'm in right now, because I'm in the U.S., Mexico, well, actually, they have a young population. However, Canada, north of us, they have an aging population. So here's a hard trend. Baby boomers, those that have been born shortly after World War II. By the way, in the United States, there are 10,000 baby boomers turning 70 every day. And think about that, 10,000 a day turning 70. Okay, all right, now just hold that in your mind for a minute. Logically, are they going to start getting younger? No, they're going to get older. By the way, that's called a hard trend. Let's show you how you can innovate around, yeah, let's show you how you can innovate around the hard trend of demographics. All right. So a lot of people love to go boating. They love to go fishing. But as they get into their late 80s, their 90s, it gets kind of hard to launch the boat. What if we created the easy launch trailer for seniors and we did a great job of designing it? Would we have a growing market in aging population countries every year? Well, yeah, in the US, we got 10,000 turning 70 every day. We got a great market. By the way, could I take those numbers to a bank and get a loan? Yeah, because they're solid numbers that are very predictable. Would I know which countries to export to and which countries not to export that easy launch trailer for seniors? Yeah, I know exactly where to go because I'm dealing with hard trends here. By the way, there is no easy launch trailer for seniors right now. In your mind, raise your hand if you think, well, we're surely not going to see one of those. I already know you didn't put your hand up because if it can be done, it will be done. If you don't, someone else will. What about as people get into their late 80s or 90s, a lot of times they fall and break a hip. You know, they're wearing bifocals or whatever. It's hard to see. They fall. They're getting weak. And by the way, if they break a hip, it's like getting pneumonia. Often they die. Well, let's innovate together right now using hard trends, and let's use technology. You could get a little rubbery thing with a little sensor on the end. By the way, that sensor could be 3D printed in the size of a fly's eye today. And you could Bluetooth that sensor to a hearing aid. And if they don't want to wear a hearing aid, we'll call it a hearing enhancement device. And as they're walking along, it will say, step down, step up. Johnny's toy's in the way again. So we'll have less people falling because they can't see. And there's something called exoskeletons. Already a 90-pound nurse in Japan can lift a 250-pound patient easily and put him in bed thanks to an exoskeleton. Well, you can make exoskeletons today, very small and light. What if you and I designed an exoskeleton that just went around the ankles and lower leg to give stability to a 90-year-old? Would we have less people falling? I'm going to tell you right now, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, those don't exist right now. In your mind, I'd like you to raise your hand if you think, well, we're sure not going to see anything like that. Well, you already know we are. Because if you innovate around a hard trend, you're innovating around something that's going to happen anyway. Why don't you do it? Because if you don't, someone else will. So we have Demographics, and by the way, I talked about baby boomers and the aging population, but every demographic uses technology differently. Every demographic communicates differently, collaborates differently. So if you're having a tough time attracting talent or keeping talent, do you have a one size fits all methodology, or do you have a different methodology for each demographic, which would be far better? So I mentioned demographics as a hard trend category, big one. Technology, very predictable, big one. And then I mentioned a third one, and this will kind of surprise you, government regulations. Oh yeah, every government has regulations, and by the way, governments don't start businesses. They put money aside for companies that do what they want them to do. Elon Musk, richest guy in the world, $300 billion. Every business he started in the US, he was using government regulations for funding. By the way, is it only the US that does that? No, all countries do that. And you might say, well, government regulations are not predictable, especially in the crazy United States with all the divisions. Holy cow. How could you predict anything there with regulation? I say, oh, yes, you can. You leave out the parts you can be wrong about. I'll give you an example. Will we in the United States have more regulations around cybersecurity? The answer is yeah, because there's some hard trends at play you can't ignore, but there's other things that we can debate. So instead of having, and I'll end it here and let you ask questions, but instead of having a big list of things I don't know, I would rather have a list of things I do know. Instead of having a big list of things I'm uncertain about, which doesn't empower me, I would rather have a list of things I am certain about because now I have the confidence to make bold moves. So, two things I was teaching there, and then we'll open it up to some questions. One, all trends are either hard trends based on a future fact that will happen, or they're a soft trend based on an assumption that may or may not happen. And the second really important thing is a trend by itself is frankly boring. Who cares? It's academic until you attach an opportunity to it. The minute an opportunity is attached to either a hard trend or a soft trend, it bursts into light. So the opportunity of a soft trend may be uncertainty in the market, trade war, causing on and off trade policies. It's causing, let's say, my company and my industry to go down in sales, let's just say. And it's been going down ever since January because of uncertainty. That's a trend, by the way. By the way, that's a soft trend. Why? Because I could write it down with the rest of the industry, or I could take advantage of it and make money off of it. I could turn it into, you see, I can change it. One other quick one about soft trends in the US, healthcare costs have been going up for 20 years. 20 years they've been going up. Is that a hard trend or a soft trend? Well, that's a soft trend, but most people think it's hard because it's been going on for 20 years. So what they do is, how do we figure out how to pay for the baby boomers as they get older? But if they realized, wait, that's a soft trend. For example, in the United States, we have such a weird system. You don't know that an aspirin costs $25 in a hospital. You knew that, you'd have your spouse bring it. You didn't know that an artificial knee made by the same company in the same size costs different in cost by 70% because it's all not transparent. So what if we used the technology like blockchain to create a system in the US, a medical system, where all of a sudden you could see the price of things? Would prices start coming down? Yeah, you wouldn't be charging $25 for an aspirin anymore. So in other words, soft trends are powerful. Don't like them, you can change them. Hard trends are powerful. You can see disruption before it disrupts, allowing you to become a positive disruptor. I want you all to be positive disruptors, not negative disruptors, positive disruptors. And how do I define that? Creating the transformations that need to happen to elevate your relevancy and accelerate innovation and profitable growth. All right, I've been zipping along for quite a while. I think it's time to let you ask me some questions. I could see in your mind's eye you are coming up with thousands of questions. So go for it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go straight on right
Yeah,
ahead
just
because
jump right in. Go for
oh
it.
yeah, you bet, because we're trying to move towards the future as much as possible.
Yeah.
So I'll make a statement and then tell me if it's correct. A hard trend cannot be changed and a soft trend can be changed. Or necessary, or yeah, can be changed. Yeah.
Let's reword that a little bit. Soft trend can't be changed. A hard trend can be influenced. It can be influenced to be either to your advantage or not. You can influence it.
Okay, so in the example of the hospital, I see the hospital looks and says there is no hard trend here. In other words, the pricing for aspirin is just kind of dispersed, and there's a lack of communication. So we charge a price that's personal. It's based on our own calculation. It doesn't take into account the external market. Now, I thought that would be considered a soft trend. And then I think that if I was going to open up the market and create, like you said, a blockchain, kind of a system that would eventually just create transparency, then the soft trend occurring in not just in the hospital, but in other pockets would also get resolved, reduced. The price would go down. As you said, that prediction, I think, is a hard trend. And the soft trend that is correcting it is the opportunity here. As like in that environment, there's a hard trend. Okay, here I'm going to try to say it from the top. The hard trend is that in a market where there is absolute transparency, prices are reduced to
Yeah. It will find a balance, a leveling.
right. And then in the and so event so because that's a hard trend, it's also a hard trend that in a scenario where there is no transparency or there's a lack of transparency, it is possible for entities to take advantage of the hard trend in the reverse for their own benefit. But it's still a hard trend because contextually it's based on the fact that transparency equals reduced price. So far, am I making sense?
Yeah, you are. And so you want to keep your opportunity antenna up at all times, looking for opportunities in either the hard trend or the soft trend. Again, the hard trend lets you see problems before you have them so you can pre-solve them. It lets, instead of just saying, I knew that would happen, and I would say, then why did you let it? The reason we let problems happen that we know are going to happen is because we didn't trust our view of it. But if we could trust our instinct about that, I knew that was going to happen. If we could trust that instinct, we could keep problems from happening. Well, if it's based on a hard trend, you know that problem is going to happen unless you do something about it, because that problem is actually soft. You can do something about it. You don't have to be stuck with it.
Why does the brain, at least it seems to me, why does the
I know.
brain
Here, now we're
desire
getting
to
into your
shift them up?
psychology. I love this. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, why does the brain want to switch it up? Like, why was I trying to label the soft trend as a hard trend and the hard trend as a soft trend? Is that a commonality, and why is that something that occurs?
Great question. Thank you. I'm glad you got that degree in psychology. So um, the reality is that when something is happening over a period of time, we start, and that's usually a trend. Remember, it could be soft, like the healthcare in the U.S. going up, up, up for a period of time. We start getting used to that, and our minds start thinking, "Oh, it's been going up for the last 3 years. It's going to go up next year," and we, in our mind, that's the way it's going to be instead of stepping back and saying, wait a minute, is that hard or soft? Because if it's soft, we could do something about it. So what I'm doing is saying our mind goes with how things are going. It's true with assumptions too. Let's talk about assumptions just a second. Many of our assumptions have been valid for our entire life. This has been true our entire life. However, we are doing things today that were impossible 2 years ago. 2 years from now, we're going to be doing things that are impossible today. We're at a unique point in human history with where technology is and what we can do and what AI can do, et cetera, et cetera. So many of those assumptions that have been true for years actually are no longer valid. They're no longer valid. But if you think they are, what you need to do is go back and find out, are they still valid? Let me give you an example of that. About 6, 7 years ago, there were companies that were thinking anything in the cloud is not secure. Let's not get in the cloud. We don't want to be in the cloud. We want to be out of the cloud. We want to have it all on our own servers. We can have more security that way. However, things changed and it became more secure to be in the cloud. And I'm an advisor to the US Pentagon and to other defense contractors around the world. And they will tell you, hey, more secure up there. By the way, there's different types of clouds and different security levels of different clouds, just as a side note. But a lot of businesses might think, well, the cloud isn't secure, which is a false assumption that used to be true. In the past, it was true, no longer true. But if they don't know that, they're now working on a false assumption. So the key is I need to validate my current assumptions to see if they're still real or is it not true. For example, I know this podcast is about AI and I am an AI expert, and I'll just get in a thing. We are in the biggest productivity revolution that has ever happened on planet Earth right now, thanks to AI. By the way, you better join that revolution right now because we're in a revolution. It's a productivity revolution like you've never seen. Well, that's a hard trend. What's the soft trend? Will you and your organization join the AI driven productivity revolution? I don't know. That's soft. That's up to you. I can't predict that. But I do know it's going to continue to unfold and get more powerful at a beyond exponential level every year.
So there's an element here. What I see is a life of hard work, of rewiring your brain from the way that people are regularly taught to do things, or to look at observe, maybe starting with observation. Could you talk a little bit about your background, like how you grew up? I'm actually particularly curious to know if you're somebody that remembers like very early childhood memories, and if like they're connected in any way to today.
Oh, yeah, they definitely are connected. Let me go back real quick to something you just said just before you asked that question, because that was something you said. And you said, I think it's going to take a lot of hard work for us to rewire our thinking. Well, is it hard work or is it exciting work? I think that is up to your own self perception. And I think, I don't know about others, but I plan on getting better every year. Now, there are things because of age that I may not be able to get better at as you get older. I know most of us are young right now watching this, but if you're lucky, you'll get older. And as you get older, 70, 80, whatever, a lot of people start thinking, well, I'm old, the good old days are behind me. But that's a mindset. I know old people that are young and young people that are old. It's not about how much gray hair they have. It's about what's going on up here. And personally, I'm excited about getting better at the things I can get better at. For example, I can be a better husband. I can be a better brother. I can be a better writer. I can be a better teacher. I can be a better, well, I got a big list and I'm working it. So am I
You just
excited?
named all the things you're good at.
Yeah, and getting better at them. So in other words, am I excited about being 90? Oh yeah, man, I'm going to be a lot better by then. You see, it's about up here. Am I interested in learning new things? Yeah. By the way, if people are not interested in change and learning new things, they're not going to like the future. They're going to have a tough time. But there's an old
Did people
saying,
that didn't like change, though, did people that didn't like change, they
the
always
people that
existed,
don't
right?
like change now, they don't like the change. I don't
But the
want to
people
change.
there were always people that resisted change, right? Were these people ever happy? I'm just saying historically, because I understand that change is a hard trend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And by the way, transformation, which is different than change, is also a hard trend. But you hit on something very important. People that are not willing to change, by the way, that means they're not willing to grow, tend to be less fulfilled because they've created a limit on themselves. Now, you asked me about when I was young. This ties into that. And by the way, I've started 6 companies, but before that, I taught biology and physics. So got a science background. Actually, as an undergraduate in college, I was the first in the United States to direct a federal research grant. So, I'm kind of a researcher guy, but I also put myself through college playing lead guitar in a rock band. So I play a dozen different musical instruments and so on. So I'm kind of an oddball guy. But anyway, when I was really young, to answer your question, and I'm talking about maybe about 6, 7 years old, somewhere very young. I remember meeting a great grandfather who was 100, and he was very frail, very frail. I don't even remember in my mind him saying anything, but I can remember seeing him at the end of a bed looking frail. And when I was a little kid, I thought to myself, someday when I'm old, I would like to have something really interesting to share and to talk about. And then I also thought to myself, I wonder if he has discovered all that's inside of him. And when I thought that, I started asking that of my mother and father. I wonder if they've discovered everything that's inside of them. And I started thinking of my aunts and uncles. I wonder if they've decided everything that's inside of them. So as a little kid, I thought, I got to find out what's inside of me. And so I'll tell you what I did because I'm going to share a strategy I want you all to consider because I know we got a lot of young people watching this. When I was 23, I made a commitment to myself, and that is because I want to discover what's inside of me. So when I was 23, I decided I'm going to learn one new thing every year. Two, maybe I can't, but one, I can learn one new thing every year. So one year I learned how to scuba dive. One year I learned how to fly. One year I learned how to dance. One year there was an open mic at a comedy club, and I know I could get my buddies to laugh, but could I get an audience I don't know to laugh? So I did that every Thursday night. One year I learned how to do fancy dives off a diving board. One year I learned how to sail. Well, decades have passed. One year I learned how to make films. One year I got into photography. Well, many, 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 many decades have passed. You know what? I've got a broad array of experiences. And I mentioned earlier, I can play over a dozen instruments. Well, one a year is doable. For example, you, whoever's listening to this now, you might be the world's best flute player. But if you've never picked up a flute, how would you know? So I believe that there is a hidden you, an undiscovered you, and you can die as an undiscovered you. I don't want you to die undiscovered. I would like you to journey inside and discover all that you are, because I'm going to tell you right now, every one of you who are watching this, you're far more than you think you are. There's far more inside of you, and I don't want it to be hidden. Why? Because the future needs you. The future needs your thinking. The future needs your creativity. The future needs your innovation. We got problems to solve. Let's go solve them.
I'm just taking it all in because it's just so powerful. The message is so clear. Some thought, a light bulb that went on in my head is this kind of thought of maybe, this phrase comes from somewhere. He who knows the future holds the keys.
Right, right. I would say that's true to. And now again, can you know all of the future? No, you don't have to know all of the future, but some of it would be good. Instead of saying the only thing you can be certain about is death and taxes, which is not true. I mean, what happens after spring? We'll get summer. And the stock market, will it go up forever? The global stock market? No, it'll go down. And by the way, will it go down forever? No, it'll go back up again. We have over 500 known cycles, business cycles, weather cycles, biological cycles that are actually quite predictable. We even have sales cycles. By the way, if there's a sales cycle, I like to have the sale completed before the cycle begins. Now, why did I say that? You can use cycles to your advantage when you know something is going to happen. So cycles are wonderful. There's a lot of ways but it's not just cycles. There's demographics. I'm giving you a hard trend. Oh my God, there's so many opportunities in demographics. There are so many opportunities in technology, knowing where it's going. And again, I know AI is a focus, but it's more than AI. We got 3D printing of human ears and blood vessels. I mean, you can 3D print the house. There was even a 3D printed rocket. You can, after we look at so many things, robotics and of course, good old AI. And when generative AI was first launched several years ago by OpenAI, I was interviewed by a major publication, and they said, will humans be replaced by AI? And I said, humans will be replaced by humans using AI.
Yeah.
So the reality is we're talking about a symbiotic relationship. Now I'm pulling on my teaching biology, but let me give you what with AI, or think of it this way, an augmented thinking. So here's the future of you and AI. Let me give it to you as an example. Let's say that you know someone who has cancer, heaven forbid. All right. And an oncologist is the kind of doctor you usually go to when you have cancer. But right now, AI knows more about oncology than any living doctor. It knows every test, every chemotherapy, everything, every MRI. It's already knows all of that stuff. It's already scraped all that, knows all of that stuff, knows more than any oncologist. So let's say there's someone you know that has cancer. I'm going to give you three choices. Number one, just AI. Choice number two, just an oncologist who's a good one. Or choice number three, a really good oncologist who has access to AI. There's your future. There's your future. So we aren't eliminating humans. Actually, we live in a technical world. No, my friends. We live in a human world. And that human world is based on relationships, and relationships are based on trust, honesty, integrity, delivering on promises. So let's not forget, we live in a human world. And AI is not good at creating relationships. AI is not good at empathy. AI is not so good at collaboration. AI is not that great at communication. AI is not too good at the higher levels of what's called the cognitive domain. And you're a psychology degree, so you know what I'm talking about. The higher levels of the cognitive domain, that's our human domain. The lower levels, we'll automate that. So freeing us to do more. I was with a major industry executives global group recently I was speaking to because I do a lot of keynote speaking around the world and consulting. And they were wanting to think out, 10 years, 15 years. And what I said to them is, all right, so let's say that you work a 40-hour week today. Remember, these are executive level, C-suite, right? Let's say you work a 40-hour week. You probably work more than that as a C-suite person, but let's say you work a 40-hour week. In 2 years, you're going to accomplish that in 30 hours. What are you going to do with the extra 10? Take a vacation? Or are you going to create new value? By 2040, you'll do everything that you're doing today in 5 hours. What are you going to do with the extra 35 hours? You going to take a vacation? Or are we going to be creating new, higher level value? I don't know about you guys. I'm creating more value because I'm freed of the drudgery that AI is freeing me from. Maybe we'll end up with, and this is the soft trend, but it's one I would like to see. And if we want to see something, we got to build for it. I would like to see an enlightened future. I would like to see that we have more opportunity for all ages. I think that we're going to spend the rest of our life in the future. Maybe we ought to think about it. And rather than just predict it, you know what I'm excited about, Danielle? I'm excited about actively shaping it. I don't want us to be passive receivers of the future. I think I'll wait and see what's going to happen here. You can wait and see yourself right out of business. I want you instead to take a look at those hard trends that you can see will happen and the soft trends that you can modify to make them better. And I would like you to use that to shape a better future for yourself, for your family, for your organization, frankly, for everybody.
The future. Let's talk about the future.
Hey, I love
So
that subject.
let's teleport ourselves into the future for a second. And I'd love to hear let's say you could put on, some kind of virtual goggles, but it would actually teleport you to the real place. What is that place? How does it look? How does it function? Where did you teleport yourself to?
Well, first of all, I will look at how we're treating people with cancer and other things, and we'll be looking back saying, whoa, in 2025, how barbaric. My God, look at what they were doing to people. I mean, by the way, if we look back to how they were treating people long ago, we would say, whoa, how barbaric, because we are doing things, right? I mean, go
Yeah.
back in time. You would say, holy cow, they did that to people? Whoa. So, but there are other things, Daniel, that we talked about before we started the podcast that are eternal. For example, in Israel, in China, in other places around, in Africa, other places around the world, we were not using drug companies. We were using the ultimate drugstore that's been put on the planet long ago, planet Earth. Actually, I think all the cures for everything can be found in nature right now. Right now. By the way, we should be looking for those before they become extinct. Nature has already provided that for us. So as I look into the future, I see that we will not be as barbaric in treating diseases as we are today. And let's face it, we're using endoscopic surgery now to keep from having to cut you open as much. Well, we will be doing less invasive and more using CRISPR and other technologies that can do some amazing things. So I think that will be part of our future. I think that we're going to end up reconnecting with our humanness because I think social media and other tools have caused us to disconnect from each other. And I'm going to get a little philosophical right now. Pardon me, but I'm going to do that anyway. I think that all humans, we're all connected to each other at birth. And the more we distance ourselves from each other, the more disharmony we get. As a matter of fact, we can distance ourselves so much, we can have war. We can be killing each other. But the reality is, every one of us on this planet is brothers and sisters. And the more we reconnect with ourselves, the better we all are and the less dissonance we have. I think that because of tech and social media and other things, we're in the disinformation age. I define disinformation as misinformation that's believed. And we're becoming less connected and less human, and technology is enabling that because we as humans are letting it. We're letting it. We're scrolling along, looking at all this stuff. We're letting it. It's controlling us. We're not controlling it. And I think we'll get to a point where we'll realize disconnection is not a happy future. I need to be more connected. I can't trust somebody that can, let's face it, AI can create a virtual you and me. And how do you even know it's me right now? Might be a virtual me, right? Right? Hey, come on. And right now we can do horrible things with AI. We can do wonderful things with AI. Everyone listening to this, I think you're probably really good people. Why don't we do wonderful things with AI while we protect ourselves from the people that are doing terrible things with AI? And I think as we get less and less trusting in our digital communications and digital stuff, I think we're going to start saying, the only way I can really have total trust is actually to be with people. Maybe we'll have to get to where we used to be, where we actually got together with people to know that we're really talking to a real person. So I think the pendulum tends to swing, and it's swinging out right now towards more and more distrust, more and more disinformation, more and more isolation, more and more disconnection. And I think we're not going to like that at some point, and we're going to start pulling ourselves back.
On that trend, is that a hard trend or a soft trend?
Total soft.
Okay, cool. So
Completely
now that
soft.
I
However,
understand,
it's a
yeah,
soft
okay.
trend. Remember, a soft trend doesn't mean it won't happen, but I would not say that's exactly what's going to happen. Actually, it's more of a desirable future. So if something can be better, well, maybe I can't, Daniel Burrus can't change the world, but I can do what I can do. Maybe I can, whatever I can do to impact things in a more positive way. So I think if we all decide to build a better future, probably we're going to get a better future. There's a concept that I started sharing over 40 years ago. Let me share it with you all now. And that's probably older than most of you even watching this are. And that is the concept of future view. How you, how your brothers, how your sisters, how your kids, how your employees, how we view the future to a great extent shapes how we act in the present. How we view the future shapes how we act in the present. Right now, there are people that are buying Apple computer shares. Other people are selling it. Why? Their future view of Apple has changed. Some kids are thinking of going to drugs. Some kids are thinking of going to college. Their future views are different. So how you view the future shapes how you act. And by the way, how you act shapes your future. In other words, your future view will determine the future you. And I would suggest that all of our future views are based more on the past than what is potential in the future. It's a rear view, mirror view, not a windshield view. I think if we look at all that is taking place that could be used for the good and we elevate our future view, we'll end up with a better future. So if you think the good old days are behind us, you're probably not going to have a great future. But if you think the good old days are ahead of us and I'm going to shape them that way, you probably will end up with a better future. So a lot of this, frankly, is psychology.
This reminds me of the Pygmalion effect, self-fulfilling prophecy. What does a person's perspective, what does their future view what kind of impact does it have on the outcome of futures? And how do you see that in general,
Well,
in your experience?
if we are in a wait and see mode, let's just see how the future unfolds. We have not taken control of our own future. We have actually let other people control it for us. It may be a spouse, it may be a brother, sister, it may be family member, it may be a community, it may be government. We have defaulted in, I'm just going to go with the flow. But the flow may not be going in a good direction. What I want to do is shape a better future for myself and for others, as I said to you earlier. I want to try to do my share in making the world a better place, even if it is just the people that in my own family, even if it's just that, or maybe the family and friends, or maybe it's a little bigger than that. Maybe when I'm in a taxi, I can have a conversation with somebody and help to open their mind to something that is currently closed. Maybe every interface I have with anyone, I can plant a seed that can help it grow a little bit, help them be a little bit better. What if we all did that? We'd end up with a better future. So I think, again, self-fulfilling prophecies are important, but I think adjusting our future view to the new realities. I've traveled around the world quite a bit. I've flown about 7 million miles over the years, giving speeches and consulting and traveling around and vacationing. I always wanted to visit my brothers and sisters on this planet, so I've done a lot of traveling around. It's a beautiful planet, by the way. And am I optimistic about the future? Absolutely. Why am I optimistic? Well, a couple of reasons. One, pessimists never do anything. Why? They know it'll fail. Optimists are the ones that try new things. So, first of all, I'd rather be trying something new than already knowing it's going to fail. Secondly, as I travel around the world, you know what I'm meeting? So many young people that are bright bulbs. They are sharp. They are smart. They're 20s, they're in their 30s, they're in their 40s, they're in their teens, and they're not going to let everything just go to hell. They are smart, and they're going to make things happen. And they're everywhere. They're everywhere around the planet. And there are a lot of them. Now, I'll admit there are some dim bulbs out there, but there's a lot of bright bulbs, and they're going to make things happen. Second thing that I'm optimistic about, I study new technologies in every category every day. I own a research company, and oh my God, we have so many new amazing tools, and it's far more than just AI, my friends, that can allow us shape the future in a positive way. Holy cow, we can solve just about any problem that's out there if we've got a vision and we're entrepreneurial enough. So let's get to it. And by the way, knowing this is an AI, let me give everyone a free report, because I don't want to get run out of time before giving you
Thank
something.
you.
So I have researched over 1,200 AI tools personally, because you can read about people saying this is good, that is good, but is it really? So I looked at over 1,200 AI tools, tested them out, and I put together a report that you can get for free. I'll tell you how to get it in a minute, where I've outlined the top 5 AI tools in a number of categories. Most people don't even know what the categories are. And I put in case studies of how different types of organizations, large and small, have used them to get tremendous results. And I put in tips on prompting and so on. So to get that report, which I update about every 2 months, and I just updated it because things are changing, you can go to AIstrategyreport.com. So
I'll put it in the link as well, by the way.
yeah, AI strategy report and just download it and look through it, and I think you'll find some value in there. Secondly, if you go to Burrus, my website, burrus.com, I have a lot of resources you can just download. I've written thousands of blogs. You can search them by subject. You want more on hard trends, more on soft trends, more on things that we haven't even had time to talk about, like how to take your biggest problem and skip it, which is, I love the skip it principle. And by the way, I've got over 30 of those kind of powerful principles. It's all right there. Dig in, enjoy, and again, don't be a passive receiver. Let's be active shapers of a better tomorrow for everyone.
Blown away. I'm just you put together such powerful statements. Daniel, you just pushed right through all of my notes. Like everything that I had prepared, you just like pushed me so far into the future that like everything that I was working with just became obsolete. And the episode's not even over.
Well, that's all right. Probably a good suggestion is, when you watch this podcast, maybe watch it again. Watch it a couple times, because there's a lot that I packed in, I'll admit. And I think it deserves unpacking a little bit. So you might want to take a look at it a couple times.
And you know what? You'll also want to stay tuned for the last minutes of the podcast, because I want to jump into just some shoot from the hip predictions for the future, see like what your thoughts are on various topics. For example, Daniel, what's your prediction on the future for the EV industry and specifically Tesla?
Yeah, good question. EVs have a bright future, even though right now the US is going in an opposite direction because of current administration. You can't stop a hard trend. EVs are a hard trend. So here's a principle I have not taught you all yet. But again, I'm a teacher. Let me teach it to you. This is another way to be really good about predicting the future. And I call it the both end principle. So a lot of times we have an either this or that about the future. Either it's all going to be carbon-based diesel and gas, or it's going to be EVs. But actually, it's going to be both and more, because we're going to have hydrogen as well. So instead of having one fuel that is how we do everything, which is kind of the way it's been for a long time, we'll have choices, multi-fuels, depending on where you are and what you need to use. If you have a lot of solar and a lot of sunshine, well, we'll have a lot more of that. If you got not a lot of sunshine, but biodiesel could work, depending on where you are in Africa or other places. In other words, it's a multi-fuel future rather than just one. EVs, absolutely going to be major, because there are technologies out there, for example, already demonstrated, you can charge your vehicle by driving over a road. Yeah, it's already working. You can make a road that, as you're driving over it, you're regenerating, and so you don't even have to plug it in. Already works. In other words, we can start to see there's hydrogen vehicles that are already working that are quite powerful. Again, is it all going to be hydrogen? No, just EVs. Well, no, we're still going to have batteries. Is it all, is gas and oil completely nothing? Oh, no, there's going to be times when we will be using that. See, now what we get to do is say, what's the right fuel for the right job? What's the right kind of power for the right job we're doing? And now looking at Tesla, and the future of Tesla. Well, of course, the Chinese are making amazing advances in EVs right now. I mean, they are going all in. And that was predictable by me way back in 2000, because in 2000, the Chinese were building one new coal fired power plant about every 2 days. And their coal is very dirty. And it was pretty easy to predict that in time, remember, this was the year 2000, it won't take long, and all of the major cities in China, they'll be choking on their own air. By the way, that happened. And what happens when you start choking on your own air and you can't even see anything and it never clears up? You start thinking, hey, you know something? We got to do something about this. So they have become more EV friendly. They've become more into alternative energy other than coal and oil. They're still doing it, but they're way cut back because they've seen the future, and it is not a polluted, deadly future. We can do something about this, or we continue to do what we do, and we'll all end up with massive health problems. So I think we can see the future already. It's just moving forward and finding ways of making it happen. Tesla itself depends a lot on Tesla's leader. So when you pick a specific company and you ask me, how is it going to do? Because it's positioned to do well, but depends on the leaders. That's where you get some soft trends taking place. It depends. Is Elon Musk distracted by SpaceX and by other things and by other ideas because he's an idea guy? As he found somebody, what he should be doing is having somebody that he trusts to run these companies, freeing him to be the idea guy. Is he going to do that? I don't know. But Tesla would zoom ahead probably if he did that, because he should be doing what he was put on the planet to do: think and ideate and create, rather than get bogged down on making management decisions and leadership decisions that a CEO could do. So how are they going to do? I don't know. That's soft. I didn't say they'll fail at all. I'm just saying that's a soft trend, how an individual company will do. And over time, I've seen the right technology come out at the right time and fail because it had the wrong leadership. I've seen that over and over and over again. So sorry, soft trend on Tesla.
How does it spill over into the space race with SpaceX versus Blue Planet versus NASA? When are we going to land on the moon? I remember reading a quote from Stephen Hawking, may he rest in peace, for saying that if we could just make it through the next 200 years, humanity will certainly be able to manage colonizing other planets. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, it would be really great if we concentrated on making sure our own planet is not something we want to get away from. So that would be a good start. And I think that man loves to reach out, and we have tools so that we, at some point, could colonize other places and reach out. Why not? We can reach for the stars. I think our only barriers is our thinking and our vision. You know, the reason, and I've had a chance to meet a lot of the original astronauts in my travels. And I even had a chance to meet Neil Armstrong in Istanbul, and had a chance to talk with him, which was fascinating. And by the way, that was a long time ago. Holy cow. That was in the late 60s. My God. So well, let's just remember, if we, and by the way, that was because we had in our case, a president, President Kennedy, that had a vision. We're going to put a man on the moon. And if we have a vision, even back in the 60s, to do something that's totally impossible, we can do it. So really what we need is more of vision. And by the way, the reason that vision worked out, it was beyond ego. It wasn't like we are going to be, it's all about me, the president. It's all about the US. When humans got on the moon, it was something for all mankind, wasn't it? It opened all of our eyes to, holy cow. I don't care where you were on the planet, you had to say to yourself, wow, maybe we can do anything we want to do, regardless of where we're from. We got to remember those moments. We need those moments again, and we can get those moments again with the right leadership. And instead of waiting for government to do it, you can do it with your own leadership.
How do we make more leaders like Elon Musk or Nicholas Tesla, Thomas Edison, even yourself? There's so many different types of what is the key to producing types of geniuses, and how do we How can we supply them with what they need in order for them to be able to maximize their own enjoyment and potential in life?
Well, it's understanding some principles that help you to move forward and help you to grow. For example, I'll give you an example. Back when I was writing my not my latest book, Anticipatory Organization, which I think everyone would like, but the book before that, A Flash Foresight, subtitle was How to See the Invisible and Do the Impossible. I thought, while I'm writing this book, why don't I start a company with two rules? I'm not going to hire anyone. I'm not going to spend any money, and see how good the book is. And by the way, I was writing it during the last recession, when all these homes were in foreclosure. That was in that 2008, 2009. That's kind of when I was writing it. And so what I did was I used hard trends. And back then, phones was new, fairly new. And the only apps on it was making it look like a beer when you went like this, 99 cents. And every app was 99 cents, and it was business apps didn't exist except for currency conversions and things like that. So back then I thought, where is a smartphone? Is that a hard trend? It'll get smarter and better, or is it a soft trend? No, it's a hard trend. It'll get exponentially smarter and better. Will there be apps for business? Is that a hard trend or a soft trend? Oh, that's a hard trend. What apps will be for business? So I started making a list of all the apps that I knew would happen, because if I didn't do it, someone else would. Then I used a free tool on Google, which still exists, and that is you can find the words that are being searched the most. And back then, the word that was searched the most was the word foreclosures, because all these houses were going into foreclosure. So I thought, why don't I make a mobile real estate app that had never been done before? And remember, I'm not going to hire anyone. I'm not going to spend money. And by the way, I gave 100 speeches around the world that year. I was writing a book that year. I was consulting that year. It wasn't like I had nothing to do. And people would say, I don't have time. Yes, you do. There's ways that you can manage your time. So anyway, here's what I did. I called a local university and I said, give me the computer science department, the head of the department, got him on the phone. And I said, I'd like the name of an undergraduate who is getting a degree in software programming that knows more than all the professors. And he said, oh, you mean Steve? And I said, yeah, Steve. Let me talk to Steve. So I called Steve and I said, Steve, what are you doing to make money on the side while you're going to school? And he said, oh, I'm programming websites for businesses. And I said, oh, I bet you're bored with that. And he said, oh, yeah, I've been doing it since junior high. And I said, well, how would you like to make a mobile app for a smartphone that's never been done before? And he said, cool. And I said, I got a rule. I can't pay any money to do it. However, I will give you 5% of the profits for the first 2 years. And he said, I'm in. And so he's the guy who did the programming. And I found other people to help me do in the same way. That's how I was able to not hire people or pay anybody. I paid them, but after the fact. So I created the first mobile real estate apps. And since they worked the same, I did a threefer. It called it Complete Foreclosures, all the foreclosed homes, Complete Homes, which is all the homes that were for sale, and Complete Rentals, all the rental properties. And when I released it, I did something that was a first, because all the apps were charging. They were charging for the apps. I was the first guy to make the app free. So what I did is I charged real estate agents 24 for a zip code in the app. The first real estate agent bought 12 zip codes. The next book bought 20. When all the zip codes were gone, that's $1.2 million a month in recurring revenue. And when I launched it in the App Store, I ended up getting, was the 7th most downloaded app right away. I was on Fox News in the US because I was disrupting real estate. Real estate agents like the app better than their own software. And now I'll go back to me being a little kid. All right. I was starting to be the real estate guy. I was disrupting the world of real estate, but that's not my future. That's really not why I was put on the planet. I was put on the planet to do what I'm doing with you today and with all of you viewers today. So I decided I got to get out of this or I'll be known as the real estate guy. So I licensed that software and a little company started using that. And that company is called Zillow, which is, doing all right. So by the way, if anyone's curious, if you Google or go to visionary apps, you will see what my first ones looked like and how it worked and a little bit of background on it. So my point in that story, because you asked me, how can people do this stuff? I would say, take a look, because I used problem skipping and a number of other things to be able to make that happen fast. No time for us to talk about all those, but pick up a copy of Anticipatory Organization, or even go back to look at Flash Foresight, because I wrote in the end of Flash Foresight, I called it the experiment, exactly what I did and how I did it. So, in other words, you can all do this. You don't have to be Elon Musk. You can be yourself. You just need some principles. You need some strategies. You need to know about hard and soft trends so you can innovate with certainty, and you can do what those other guys are doing. You can do it.
Wow. It's Daniel, it's such an honor to have you on the podcast. I'm excited to share it and watch. And also don't forget, viewers, to like and subscribe to my channel. Also Daniel's channel. I'm gonna be providing all the links and details so that you all can get more involved. What we did today was just an opener, just so you can get your mind in the right place. But far be it from any of us to think that we've mastered anything here. We are on the path towards our future, and it's an honor to have an expert who has the experience. He's able to look back correctly, accurately on history, and from what actually he was in key places at key times, interacted with key individuals, and provided sage advice. And I looked through Daniel's content, and I found, going back many years, predictions that he made, which are still
Go
coming
way
true
back
today, and
there.
which I can't wait. I literally can't wait to see where some of your predictions are going to go in the future. So we must stay involved and subscribe to what you're up to. And I know that if I can believe in the future and the positive future that you're portraying, that it's definitely gonna not only rub off on me, but it will on others. And if we can get into that collective mentality, the communal mentality of let's work together, let's believe in this, let's make the future that we want, pull ourselves out of being passive, become active, anticipatory entities that are moving towards creating the future that we all so desperately need. And if you don't think about your family and friends and all those that you love right now, this is the time to do it. So without further ado, Daniel, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and looking forward to getting you again on here in the future.
You got it. Thank you so much.